I'm sitting in the front row of my only daughter's wedding when the impossible happens. Reginald Crowley, the father of the groom, stands up during what should be the toast portion of the reception and yanks the microphone right out of the master of ceremonies' hands. His first words freeze the blood in my veins. Before we celebrate this union, I need to be honest with everyone here. My heart starts hammering. Aurelia is standing next to Callum at the makeshift altar they set up in the garden, radiant in her ivory silk gown that we spent 3 months choosing together. She has no idea what's coming. None of us do, except apparently Reginald and his wife Gwendolyn, who's watching from her seat with this tight little smile that makes my stomach turn. "This girl is an opportunist," Reginald announces, and he actually points at my daughter like she's a piece of merchandise he's rejecting. She comes from new money, no lineage, no real class, but my son insists on marrying her anyway. The laughter starts low, scattered among the Crowley side of the venue. First a few cousins, then some uncles. Then it spreads like poison through half the guests. They're actually laughing. At my daughter, on her wedding day, I watch Aurelia's face crumble. She's 28 years old, a talented architect who graduated top of her class from Clemson, who's never asked anyone for anything she hasn't earned herself. And she's standing there in front of 200 people while her new father-in-law calls her a gold digger and strangers laugh at her pain. Callum is frozen next to her, completely frozen. His face has gone pale, but he's not moving, not speaking, not defending the woman he supposedly loves enough to marry. He just stands there like a statue while his father destroys her. Gwendolyn laughs behind her champagne flute. That's what breaks something inside me. Not just the laugh itself, but the cruelty in it, the satisfaction. I've been quiet for 57 years in moments like this. Quiet when people whispered about me marrying Thomas 33 years ago, calling me a fortune hunter behind my back. Quiet when I lost him 8 years ago and had to rebuild everything from nothing. Quiet through countless dinner parties where people like the Crowleys made their subtle little comments about new money and self-made success, as if these were somehow shameful things. But watching my daughter's tears fall while her groom does nothing and her new in-laws laugh, that's where my silence ends. I stand up. My chair scrapes against the floor, and somehow that small sound cuts through the laughter. People turn to look at me. I'm wearing the emerald silk dress Aurelia helped me choose. My hair is swept up in the style she said made me look like a queen, and I'm wearing the diamond earrings Thomas gave me on our 20th anniversary. I look every inch the successful woman I've become, and I use that now. I walk down the aisle between the chairs, my heels clicking on the stone pathway they laid out for the ceremony. The laughter dies as I approach. Reginald sees me coming, and his expression shifts from smug satisfaction to something that might be nervousness, though he tries to hide it. "Mrs. Scotland, I was just—" he starts, but I don't let him finish. I reach up and take the microphone right out of his hand. He's taller than me by 6 inches, but I've learned that physical height means nothing compared to moral authority. And right now, I have all of it. "Sit down, Reginald," I say into the microphone, and my voice is steady and cold and absolutely final. "Sit down right now, because what I'm about to reveal is going to destroy a lot more than just this wedding." He blinks at me, clearly not expecting this. Neither is anyone else. Gwendolyn's smile has vanished. Callum has finally moved, stepping down from the altar, but I hold up one hand to stop him. "Everyone stay exactly where you are," I continue. "You've all just witnessed a man publicly humiliate a young woman on what should be the happiest day of her life. You laughed along with him, some of you anyway. So now you're all going to stand here and listen to the truth about the Crowley family, because I promise you it's much more interesting than anything Reginald just said." I reach into the bodice of my dress and pull out an envelope. I've been carrying it against my heart through this entire ceremony, hoping I wouldn't need it, praying I wouldn't need it. But I'm a practical woman, and I always prepare for the worst-case scenario. The worst case just happened. Reginald recognizes the logo on the envelope. I watch his face go from pink to white in about 3 seconds. It's the letterhead of Sterling Investigations, the private firm I hired 6 months ago when my instincts started screaming that something was very wrong with this family my daughter was marrying into. "Let's start with Crowley Pharmaceuticals," I say, and my voice carries across the suddenly silent garden. "Your successful family business, The one you've spent this entire engagement bragging about to anyone who would listen. Should we tell everyone here what's really going on with it, Reginald? Or should I? He tries to speak, but nothing comes out. Gwendolyn actually drops her champagne flute. It shatters on the stone patio, and the sound is like a gunshot in the silence. Your company is $12 million in debt, I continue, pulling the first document from the envelope. You've lost 3 major patents in the last 18 months. The FDA is investigating you for fraudulent pricing practices. And according to the documents I have here, you've got about 4 months before the whole thing collapses completely. Gasps ripple through the crowd. I see Aurelia looking at me with wide eyes, tears still on her cheeks, but now mixed with something else. Confusion. Hope. The beginning of understanding. This beautiful property we're standing on right now. I gesture around at the Crowley estate, the historic mansion that Gwendolyn has spent 6 months bragging about in every conversation. Has 3 mortgages on it. 3. All of them in default. There was actually a foreclosure proceeding scheduled for 60 days from now. Was, past tense. Because 3 weeks ago, I paid $85,000 to stop it. More gasps. Reginald tries to move toward me, but 2 of the security guards I hired step forward. Yes, I hired the security for this wedding. I paid for a lot more than that, actually. But we'll get to that. I paid it because I didn't want my daughter's wedding day ruined by having it literally foreclosed out from under her, I explain. I have the receipts, the bank transfers, everything. This property that you've been using to demonstrate your family's success and stability? I own it now, technically. Through the mortgage I paid off. Callum's face has gone from pale to gray. He's staring at his father with an expression I've never seen on him before. Betrayal. Complete and utter betrayal. But that's not even the worst part, I continue, and now I pull out another set of documents. Reginald, should we tell your son about his trust fund? The one his grandfather set up for him? The $340,000 that was supposed to be there for when he turned 30 next year? Don't, Reginald says, and it's the first word he's managed since I took the microphone. Don't do this. Don't do what? Tell the truth? The way you just told the truth about my daughter? I turn to face Callum directly. Your father embezzled it. Every penny. He took money that your grandfather intended for you and used it to cover his gambling debts. I have bank records, transfer receipts, everything. You have no trust fund, Callum. You never did. Your father stole it. Callum actually staggers backward. Aurelia catches his arm, and the fact that she's comforting him right now after everything just proves what a good person my daughter is. Better than any of these people deserve. The agreement your father kept pushing you to make Aurelia sign, I continue. The prenuptial agreement that wasn't actually prenuptial at all. It was designed to give the Crowley family access to assets they knew I was planning to transfer to Aurelia as a wedding gift. Properties worth approximately $1.8 million. I let that number sink in. Watch it register on faces throughout the crowd. This wedding was never about love for Reginald and Gwendolyn Crowley. It was about money. My money specifically. They researched me, investigated my finances, and determined that marrying their son to my daughter was their best chance at accessing the capital they need to keep their failing business afloat for a few more months. That's not, Gwendolyn starts, but I cut her off with a look. I have emails, I say simply, between you and your husband, discussing exactly this. My investigator was very thorough. You want me to read them aloud? Because I will. I brought copies for everyone. She closes her mouth and sits back down, hard. You stood here today and called my daughter an opportunist, I say, turning back to Reginald. You accused her of being a gold digger, of marrying for money instead of love. But you're describing yourself. You're projecting your own greed, your own desperation, your own complete moral bankruptcy onto a young woman whose only crime was falling in love with your son. My hands are shaking now, but my voice stays steady. I've waited 6 months for this moment, prepared for it, hoped I'd never need to use what I learned. But Reginald forced my hand. The difference between my daughter and you, I continue, is that Aurelia built her own career. She graduated with honors. She works 60-hour weeks at an architecture firm where she's respected for her talent and dedication. She doesn't need Crowley money. She never did. In fact, you need her money. You need my money. That's what this has always been about. I can see some of the guests starting to look uncomfortable. Good. They should be uncomfortable. They laughed at my daughter. They participated in her humiliation. Now they can participate in the truth. But here's the thing you didn't know about me, Reginald, I say, and I let a little bit of satisfaction creep into my voice. I didn't just investigate your finances. I investigated your history. And I found something very interesting from 33 years ago. His face changes. Real fear now, replacing the anger and embarrassment. When I married my husband Thomas, there were rumors about me. Vicious rumors calling me a gold digger, saying I was only after his family money. Those rumors almost destroyed my marriage in its first year. Thomas and I nearly divorced because of them. For 3 decades, I thought they just appeared naturally, the way gossip does. But they didn't appear naturally, did they, Reginald? I pull out the final set of documents from my envelope, photocopies of letters, yellowed with age but perfectly legible. You started them. You wrote letters to members of the Charleston Country Club. You spread gossip at business dinners. You systematically worked to destroy my reputation and my marriage because my husband Thomas refused to go into business with you. He saw through your corruption even then, and when he said no to your proposal, you decided to punish him by attacking his new wife. I throw the copies of the letters onto the table where Reginald is now sitting, because he finally sat down. He looks like he might be sick. I have the originals, I tell him. Authenticated, dated, with your signature. You destroyed my reputation 33 years ago with lies. And now, today, you tried to do the same thing to my daughter with the same lies, calling her what you actually are. An opportunist, a user, someone who sees other people as resources to exploit. The silence in the garden is absolute. Even the birds seem to have stopped singing. Everyone is staring at Reginald, at Gwendolyn, at me, at the papers scattered on the table. Aurelia is crying again, but differently now. She's looking at me with such fierce love and gratitude that I feel my own eyes burn with tears I won't let fall. Not yet. Callum walks toward his father. His movements are slow, deliberate, and when he speaks, his voice is quiet, but everyone hears it anyway. You stole my trust fund, he says. You were going to let me marry Aurelia thinking I had financial security when you'd already taken it all. And you made me think she was the threat to our family. Son, Reginald starts, but Callum holds up his hand. Don't. Just don't. He turns away from his father and walks to Aurelia, takes both her hands in his. And for the first time since this nightmare started, he does what he should have done immediately. I'm sorry, he tells her. I'm so sorry I didn't defend you. I'm sorry I let him say those things. I'm sorry I've been so blind to what they were doing. This is the moment that matters. Everything else has been exposure, revelation, the public destruction of the Crowley family's lies. But this moment, watching my future son-in-law finally choose my daughter over his toxic family, this is what will determine whether this wedding continues or ends. I need to explain how we got here, to this moment where I'm standing in a garden holding a microphone and the wreckage of a family's lies scattered at my feet. 8 years ago, I lost my husband Thomas in a car accident on Highway 17. He was driving home from a business meeting in Myrtle Beach when a drunk driver crossed the median. He died instantly, they told me. No suffering. That was supposed to be a comfort, but it wasn't. Nothing was a comfort. Aurelia was 20 years old, halfway through her architecture degree at Clemson. I was 51 and suddenly alone after 29 years of marriage. The grief was overwhelming, suffocating. But grief, as I quickly learned, was only the beginning of my problems. 3 weeks after the funeral, Thomas's accountant called me in for a meeting. He looked uncomfortable, kept adjusting his tie, wouldn't meet my eyes. That's when he told me about the debt, $800,000 in investment losses that Thomas had hidden from me for 2 years. He'd been trying to fix it himself, taking on more risk to recover the initial losses, and it had spiraled completely out of control. In less than a month, I went from comfortable widow to woman facing potential bankruptcy. The house had a mortgage I didn't know about. The investment accounts were hollow shells. Thomas had been moving money around, borrowing against our future, trying desperately to climb out of the hole he'd dug. And he'd died before he could tell me any of it. I could have been angry at him. Part of me was, but mostly I was terrified. Aurelia still had 2 years of college to finish. I had no career of my own, just volunteer work and the hobby of interior design that I'd been playing with for years, and I had creditors circling like sharks. I made a decision in that accountant's office. I wasn't going to let Thomas's mistakes destroy everything we'd built. More importantly, I wasn't going to let them destroy Aurelia's future. I sold the house within 2 months, paid off the immediate debts, moved into a modest apartment in downtown Charleston. Aurelia wanted to drop out of school to help me, but I refused. I told her to focus on her degree, that I had everything under control. That was a lie. I didn't have anything under control. But I knew I would figure it out. I took the small amount of money I had left after paying the debts and invested it in 2 rental properties that were being sold in foreclosure. Everyone told me I was crazy, that I was risking what little security I had left. But I'd been watching the Charleston real estate market for years, and I knew those properties were undervalued. I was right. Within 18 months, I'd renovated them and sold one for 3 times what I paid. I kept the other as a rental. That's when I turned my interior design hobby into a business. I used the profit from the property sale as seed money and opened a boutique design firm specializing in luxury homes. I worked 18-hour days for 5 solid years, took every client, no matter how difficult, built a reputation for impeccable taste and ruthless efficiency. The business grew faster than I expected. I also started investing more aggressively in real estate. Bought properties at the right time, renovated them, either sold them or kept them as rentals. Made smart choices, took calculated risks. By the time Aurelia graduated with her architecture degree 3 years ago, I had rebuilt everything Thomas and I lost, and then some. My current net worth is $4.2 million. Every single penny earned by my own work, my own intelligence, my own willingness to do whatever it took to secure our future. I own 6 rental properties in Charleston. My design firm employs 12 people and turns a profit of roughly $500,000 annually. I have investment accounts, retirement funds, and enough liquid assets to weather any storm. But the thing about building wealth after people have whispered that you married for money is that you never forget those whispers. When Thomas and I got married 33 years ago, I was 24 and he was 32. His family had old Charleston money, the kind that comes with trust funds and country club memberships and automatic social acceptance. My family was solidly middle class. My father was a high school teacher. My mother was a nurse. We were comfortable, but nothing special. The whispers started within weeks of our engagement. Gold digger, fortune hunter. She trapped him. I heard them at parties, saw them in the way certain women looked at me at the country club, felt them in the cool politeness of Thomas's mother before she finally accepted me. Those whispers were torture for 24-year-old me, young and in love and desperately wanting to be accepted. Thomas defended me fiercely. He cut off friendships with people who questioned my motives. He made it clear that anyone who disrespected his wife would no longer be part of his life. That loyalty meant everything to me. It's probably why I forgave him for the financial disaster he left behind. He loved me genuinely, protected me fiercely, even when he was making terrible mistakes. What I didn't know for 3 decades was where those whispers originated. I assumed they were just natural gossip, the kind that always circulates when someone marries up economically. It never occurred to me that someone had deliberately started them, fed them, nurtured them into a campaign designed to destroy my marriage. 6 months ago, when Aurelia brought Callum home for Sunday dinner and announced they were getting engaged, I felt the old familiar nervousness. The Crowleys were old money, just like Thomas's family had been. Reginald Crowley was prominent in Charleston business circles. Gwendolyn was a fixture at charity events. On the surface, they were exactly the kind of established family that should have welcomed my successful, educated, beautiful daughter. But something felt wrong from the very first family dinner. Little comments from Gwendolyn about new money and self-made success, said with this subtle edge that made them sound like criticisms instead of compliments. Questions from Reginald about my business, my properties, my investments, that felt more like interrogation than polite interest. The way they both studied Aurelia like she was a commodity they were considering purchasing. Callum seemed oblivious to it all. He was genuinely in love with my daughter, that much was clear. But he had this way of smoothing over his parents' rudeness, making excuses for them, changing the subject whenever things got uncomfortable. He never actually defended Aurelia. He just deflected. I started noticing other things. How Gwendolyn would make passive-aggressive comments about Aurelia's clothes, her career choices, even her apartment. How Reginald would dominate every conversation, turning everything back to his business success and family legacy. How neither of them ever asked Aurelia about her own work, her own dreams, her own thoughts on anything that mattered. 3 months before the wedding, something happened that crystallized all my vague concerns into genuine alarm. We were at a dinner party at the Crowley estate, celebrating some business milestone of Reginald's. Gwendolyn had several glasses of wine, and her filter slipped. She was talking to one of her society friends, didn't realize I was close enough to hear. "Well, at least the marriage solves our financial problems," she said with this brittle laugh. Reginald was right about that. The friend looked uncomfortable and changed the subject quickly. But I heard it. And I saw the way Reginald appeared immediately afterward and steered Gwendolyn away, whispering sharply to her as they walked toward the bar. That night, I couldn't sleep. Financial problems. What financial problems? Reginald constantly bragged about Crowley Pharmaceuticals, about their patents, their success, their bright future. He drove a Mercedes. They lived in a mansion. They belonged to all the right clubs. But something in Gwendolyn's voice, the way she said it, the immediate panic on that friend's face. The next morning, I called Sterling Investigations. I'd used them before for background checks on potential business partners. I told them I needed a complete financial investigation of Reginald Crowley and Crowley Pharmaceuticals. I also, on impulse, asked them to look into the Crowley family's history in Charleston, any connection to my husband Thomas, anything that seemed relevant. The preliminary report came back in 3 weeks. It was devastating. Crowley Pharmaceuticals was imploding. They'd lost 3 major patent lawsuits in 18 months. The FDA was investigating them for deceptive pricing practices on a cardiac medication. They had outstanding debts of over $12 million. The company was projected to collapse within 6 months. But that was just the beginning. The deeper investigation revealed that Reginald had been systematically looting every asset he could access. He'd taken out 3 mortgages on the family estate. He'd borrowed against his wife's trust fund, and he'd embezzled $340,000 from Callum's trust fund, the one Callum's grandfather had established years ago, and that Callum thought was safely waiting for him when he turned 30. The gambling debts were almost funny in how cliché they were. Reginald had a serious problem with high-stakes poker games at a private club in Savannah. He'd been losing consistently for years, trying to win back his losses, digging himself deeper and deeper. When I showed Aurelia the financial reports 2 weeks before the wedding, she went pale. But she was also defensive. "He's Callum's father," she said. "Callum loves his family. This will destroy him." "Sweetheart, they're using you," I told her as gently as I could. "They researched me. They know about the properties I'm planning to transfer to you. This isn't about love. It's about money." She didn't want to believe it. Young love is stubborn that way, unwilling to see darkness in people we care about. She promised to talk to Callum about his parents' finances, about setting boundaries, about protecting ourselves. But I could see the doubt in her eyes, the hope that I was wrong. Then the investigator called with the historical information. He'd found letters in the archives of the Charleston Country Club, correspondence from 33 years ago, letters written by Reginald Crowley to various prominent members, letters that systematically spread rumors about me being a fortune hunter, about me trapping Thomas into marriage, about me being unsuitable for Charleston society. Reading those letters broke something open inside me. All those years of whispers, all that pain and humiliation I'd endured as a young bride, all the damage done to my marriage in those early years. Reginald Crowley had orchestrated it, deliberately, maliciously, because Thomas refused to go into business with him on some pharmaceutical scheme that Thomas recognized as legally questionable. Reginald had tried to destroy my marriage with lies 33 years ago, and now he was positioning himself to do the same thing to my daughter with the exact same lies. That's when I made my decision. I would carry the evidence to the wedding. I would hope Reginald would behave with basic human decency. But if he didn't, if he tried to humiliate my daughter the way he'd humiliated me decades earlier, I would destroy him with the truth. I paid off the mortgage on his estate to prevent the wedding from being literally foreclosed. I hired the security. I arranged the backup plans, and I carried that envelope against my heart through the ceremony, through the vows, through the photographs, praying I wouldn't need to use it, but prepared to do exactly what I just did if Reginald forced my hand. He forced my hand. Aurelia is still staring at Callum, waiting for his response to his apology. The entire garden is holding its breath. I can feel 200 pairs of eyes watching this moment, watching to see if this wedding will continue or collapse completely. I choose you, Callum says to Aurelia, and his voice is stronger now. I should have chosen you the second my father opened his mouth. I should have chosen you months ago when I saw how they were treating you. I'm choosing you now, and I'm asking you to please give me the chance to prove that I mean it. Aurelia looks at me over Callum's shoulder. Our eyes meet, and in that moment, we have an entire conversation without words. She's asking my opinion, asking if I think he means it, asking if she should forgive him for his paralysis. I can't make this choice for her. I've done what I can. The rest is up to her and the man she loves. She turns back to Callum and nods slowly. We're going to have a very long conversation after this, she tells him, about boundaries, about standing up to your family, about what marriage actually means. Whatever you need, he says immediately. Whatever it takes. Reginald chooses this moment to find his voice again. This is ridiculous, he announces, standing up from where he'd collapsed into a chair. These allegations are completely unfounded. That woman is presenting falsified documents, making slanderous accusations. Sit down, Dad. Callum's voice cuts through his father's bluster like a knife. Just sit down and stop talking. I will not be spoken to like this by my own son. You stole from me, Callum shouts, and the raw pain in his voice silences his father immediately. You stole $340,000 that Grandpa left for me. Money he saved his entire life. Money he wanted me to have for my future. And you took it to cover your gambling debts. How am I supposed to respond to that? With respect? With deference? Gwendolyn is crying now, mascara running down her face in black streaks. We were going to pay it back, she says weakly. Once the business recovered. The business isn't going to recover, Mom. Callum's voice is flat now, emotionless. It's dying. You've known it was dying for how long? A year? 2 years? And instead of telling me the truth, you tried to use my wedding as some kind of financial rescue plan. I'm still holding the microphone, still standing at the center of this devastation I've created. Part of me feels guilty. These are human beings I'm destroying, a family I'm tearing apart. But then I look at Aurelia's tear-stained face and remember the sound of laughter when Reginald called her an opportunist, and the guilt evaporates. I think we should continue with the wedding, I say into the microphone, and everyone turns to look at me like I've lost my mind. Not the reception that was planned, not the celebration that Reginald and Gwendolyn envisioned, but a real wedding with only the people who actually care about Aurelia and Callum. I look around the garden at the assembled guests. If you're here because you genuinely love these two young people, if you came to celebrate their happiness rather than their family connections or business opportunities, please stay. If you're here for any other reason, I'm asking you to leave now. There's a long moment of uncomfortable silence. Then people start moving. Reginald's business associates stand up, gather their things, and head for the parking area. Several of Gwendolyn's society friends follow them. Some of the extended Crowley family members leave, shooting dark looks at me as they go. Others stay, looking uncertain but loyal. By the time the exodus is finished, we've lost about half the guests. The ones who remain are mostly Aurelia's friends, a few of Callum's architect colleagues, some of my business associates who've become genuine friends over the years, and surprisingly, a handful of Crowley relatives who apparently disapprove of Reginald enough to stay. Reginald, Gwendolyn, you need to leave, I say, and my voice is gentle now, but absolutely firm. This is your son's wedding day, and you've done enough damage. If you care about him at all, you'll go quietly. This is our property, Reginald starts, but I cut him off. Actually, as I explained, it's technically my property now through the mortgage I paid. I have the legal documentation. You can contest it later if you want, but right now, today, I'm asking you to leave so your son can get married without any more drama. Gwendolyn stands up slowly. She looks 10 years older than she did an hour ago. Callum, she says, and her voice breaks. Please. We only wanted what was best. No, you didn't, Callum interrupts. You wanted what was best for you. There's a difference. He takes a deep breath. I need time, Mom. I need time to process all of this, to figure out what happens next. But right now, I need you to leave. It's the firmest I've ever heard him speak to his parents. Gwendolyn flinches like he's slapped her. Reginald looks like he wants to argue, but one of Callum's uncles, a quiet man named Edward who stayed, walks over and puts a hand on Reginald's shoulder. Come on, Reg, Edward says quietly. You've done enough for one day. Let the kids have their wedding. Reginald shakes off his brother's hand but doesn't argue further. He and Gwendolyn walk toward the house, their backs rigid with anger and humiliation. I watch them go and feel nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, nothing. They brought this on themselves. Once they're gone, I turn to Aurelia and Callum. Do you still want to get married today? They look at each other for a long moment. Then Aurelia nods. Yes, she says. But can we do it differently? Smaller? More intimate? Whatever you want, sweetheart. The next hour is chaos, but productive chaos. We restructure everything. The caterers, who I'm paying for, agree to set up a much simpler dinner for the remaining guests. The photographer, also my hire, is more than happy to focus on intimate shots instead of the formal posed pictures the Crowleys had demanded. The minister who was supposed to perform the ceremony had left with the Crowley faction. But one of Aurelia's college friends is an ordained officiant who volunteers immediately. We move the ceremony to a smaller area of the garden, just a simple space under an oak tree. The remaining guests arrange themselves in a casual circle. Someone finds a Bluetooth speaker and plays music from their phone instead of the string quartet that packed up and left. It's imperfect and improvised, and absolutely nothing like the formal society wedding the Crowleys had planned. It's also exactly what Aurelia and Callum need. The ceremony itself is brief. Callum's friend Sarah, the officiant, keeps it simple and heartfelt. She talks about choosing love over obligation, about building a marriage on truth instead of appearances, about having the courage to stand up for each other even when it's difficult. Her words feel pointed given everything that just happened, but they're also perfect. When it comes time for vows, Callum goes first. Aurelia, I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough before today. I'm sorry I let my parents treat you badly because I was afraid of confronting them. But I'm not afraid anymore. I promise to always defend you, to always choose you, to always be honest even when the truth is hard. I promise to build a life with you that's based on who we actually are, not who anyone else wants us to be. His voice cracks on the last words, and Aurelia reaches up to wipe tears from his cheeks. Callum, I love you, she says when it's her turn. I've loved you since the day you spilled coffee all over my presentation boards at the office, and then spent 2 hours helping me recreate them. I love your kindness, your talent, your dedication to doing good work. I know today was hard. I know it's going to be complicated going forward, but I want to build that life with you. The honest one. The real one. They exchange rings, simple gold bands that Callum chose months ago, and Sarah pronounces them married. The kiss they share is tender and real, and the guests who remained applaud with genuine joy. As I watch my daughter kiss her new husband, I feel the tension that's been coiled in my chest for 6 months finally start to release. She's going to be okay. They're going to be okay. It won't be easy, but it's possible now in a way it wouldn't have been if Reginald and Gwendolyn had continued manipulating them. The reception that follows is nothing like the elaborate affair that was planned. We eat dinner at long tables under the trees, family style instead of the formal plated service the Crowleys had arranged. People talk and laugh, and the atmosphere is relaxed in a way it never would have been with Reginald and Gwendolyn holding court. But around 7 in the evening, when the sun is starting to set and people are finishing dessert, Callum's uncle Edward approaches me. I'm sitting at a table with some of Aurelia's friends, enjoying a glass of wine and watching my daughter dance with her new husband to music playing from someone's phone. Mrs. Scotland, Edward says quietly, may I speak with you privately for a moment? I excuse myself and follow him to a quieter corner of the garden. Edward is in his late 50s, a medical doctor who's always seemed like the most reasonable member of the Crowley family. He stayed for the wedding, but he's been quiet all evening. I owe you an apology, he says once we're alone. Several apologies, actually, on behalf of my family. You don't need to apologize for your brother's behavior, I tell him. I think I do, he says, because I've known for months that Reg was in financial trouble. I've known for years that he has a gambling problem. And I knew he was pushing Callum toward this marriage for the wrong reasons. I should have said something. I should have warned you, or warned Callum, or done something other than just watch it happen. I study his face in the fading light. He looks genuinely troubled, ashamed even. Why didn't you say something? Family loyalty, I suppose. The Crowley code of keeping problems private, not airing dirty laundry. He shakes his head. But that code has protected Reg for too long. It's enabled him to hurt people without consequences. Today was a disaster, but it was also necessary. Someone needed to stop him. I didn't want to stop him, I admit. I just wanted to protect my daughter. Everything else was collateral damage. Justified collateral damage, Edward says firmly. What he did today, humiliating Aurelia like that, it was cruel and calculated. He thought if he broke her emotionally, she'd be more pliable, more willing to sign over access to your assets. It was psychological manipulation dressed up as a toast. I feel sick hearing it stated so plainly. You knew he was planning something? I knew he was planning to make a speech. I didn't know it would be that vicious. When it started, I was too shocked to react. Edward looks toward the house where Reginald and Gwendolyn disappeared hours ago. My brother has spent his entire life believing his family name and social position make him better than other people. That belief has made him cruel. Today you proved that character matters more than lineage. I'm grateful for that lesson, even if Reg isn't. We stand in silence for a moment. Then Edward says, "The trust fund you mentioned, the money Reg took from Callum. I have some resources. I can't replace all of it, but I can help. I'd like to set up a fund for Callum and Aurelia, a wedding gift that might soften some of the financial damage." That's generous, I say carefully, but they might not accept it. Callum seems determined to build something independent. Then I'll structure it as an investment in their future, not charity. Maybe a down payment assistance fund for when they're ready to buy a house, or capital for Aurelia's architecture career if she ever wants to start her own firm. Edward smiles slightly. I'm a doctor, Mrs. Scotland. I've spent my career trying to fix damage. Let me try to fix some of the damage my brother has caused. I agree to let him talk to Callum and Aurelia about it. As Edward walks away, I realize that not all of the Crowley family is toxic. Some of them are just trapped in a system that protects people like Reginald at the expense of everyone else. Later, as the evening is winding down and guests are starting to leave, Aurelia comes to find me. She's taken off her heels and her hair is coming loose from its updo, and she's never looked more beautiful. "Thank you, Mom," she says, pulling me into a tight hug. "Thank you for protecting me. Thank you for being brave when I couldn't be. You were brave today," I tell her. "You chose to continue, to fight for your marriage instead of running away. That took courage. I learned from the best," she says. She pulls back to look at me, and there are tears in her eyes, but she's smiling. "I know what you did, rebuilding everything after Dad died. I know how hard you worked, how much you sacrificed. I've always known, and I've always wanted to make you proud." "You do make me proud," I tell her, and now I'm crying too. "Every single day, you make me proud." We stand there holding each other as the last light fades from the garden and the first stars appear overhead. Around us, the remaining guests are saying their goodbyes, gathering their things, heading home. The disaster of a wedding is ending, and something new is beginning. Callum joins us, wrapping his arms around both of us. "Thank you, Marlo," he says to me, "for everything, for exposing the truth, for giving us the chance to start over without the lies. Take care of my daughter," I tell him. "That's all the thanks I need." "I will," he promises. "I swear I will." They leave a little while later, driving off to the downtown hotel where I've booked them the honeymoon suite as a wedding gift. As I watch their car disappear down the long driveway, I feel exhausted and relieved and vindicated all at once. The caterers are cleaning up. The remaining staff are breaking down tables and chairs. I should probably go home, but I find myself walking back to the small area under the oak tree where Aurelia and Callum got married. The space feels peaceful now, sacred almost. I think about Thomas, about how he would have reacted to everything that happened today. He would have been furious with Reginald, proud of me for standing up to him, worried about the fallout. But ultimately, he would have approved. Thomas always believed in protecting family above all else. I hope I did the right thing, I say quietly to the empty garden, to Thomas's memory, to the universe. I hope this was protecting her and not just revenge. But even as I say it, I know the truth. It was both. It was protection and revenge, justice and vindication. It was a mother defending her daughter and a woman settling a 33-year-old score. It was messy and complicated and human, just like everything else in life. I'm sitting alone in my car in the now empty parking area of the Crowley estate when my phone rings. It's nearly 10 at night, and I'm exhausted in a way that goes beyond physical tiredness. The number on the screen is local, but unfamiliar. Marlow, Scotland, I answer. Mrs. Scotland, this is Detective Patricia Hammond with the Charleston Police Department. I apologize for calling so late, but I need to speak with you about Reginald Crowley. My heart jumps. Is something wrong? Did something happen? No, ma'am, nothing like that. I'm calling because Mr. Crowley filed a complaint against you approximately 2 hours ago. He's alleging that you falsified documents, made slanderous statements, and essentially defrauded him in some way. He's demanding that we investigate you for extortion and fraud. I close my eyes and lean my head back against the seat. Of course he did. Of course Reginald would respond to exposure by attacking the person who exposed him. It's exactly what a man like him would do when cornered. Detective Hammond, I have extensive documentation to support everything I revealed today. Financial records, bank statements, legal documents, authenticated historical correspondence. I hired a licensed private investigation firm, and everything they found is legitimate and verifiable. That's what I suspected, Detective Hammond says, and I hear something like sympathy in her voice. Mr. Crowley was quite agitated when he came in, made some threats, demanded immediate action, but his complaint was vague on specifics and heavy on emotion. I wanted to hear your side before proceeding. I explain the situation as clearly and factually as I can. The investigation I commissioned, the financial documents I obtained through legal means, the historical letters I found in archived club records, I offer to provide her with copies of everything. I'd appreciate that, she says. Though between you and me, Mrs. Scotland, this sounds more like a civil matter than a criminal one. Mr. Crowley's complaint seems to be that you embarrassed him, not that you actually committed any crime. Embarrassment isn't illegal, even when it's public. He humiliated my daughter at her own wedding, I say quietly. I simply told the truth about his financial situation and his history. If that embarrassed him, perhaps he should have considered his actions more carefully. I don't disagree, Detective Hammond says. I'll need to follow up on his complaint officially, so expect a call in the next few days to arrange a time for you to provide documentation. But I wanted you to know that this is happening, so you're not caught off guard. After we hang up, I sit in my car for a long time, processing this new development. I'm not worried about criminal charges. I have all the documentation I need to prove everything I said was true. But this is Reginald's next move, clearly. If he can't win socially, he'll try to win legally. He'll drag this out, make it expensive and exhausting, try to punish me for exposing him. I'm debating whether to call my lawyer tonight or wait until morning when another call comes through. This time, it's a number I recognize, James Peterson, the president of the Charleston Business Association. I've served on their board for 3 years. Marlowe, I just heard about what happened at the Crowley wedding today, he says without preamble. I need to know if the information about Crowley Pharmaceuticals is accurate, about the debts, the FDA investigation, all of it. It's completely accurate, I tell him. I have documentation from a licensed investigation firm. Why? Because Reginald Crowley is on our board of directors. He's been positioning himself to take over as president next year when my term ends. And if what you're saying is true, if his company is actually failing and he's been lying to everyone about it, that's a massive problem. He's been advising other business owners, making recommendations about investments and partnerships. If his judgment is that compromised, if his own financial situation is that dire, he could be leading other people into disaster. I hadn't even considered this angle. Reginald's influence extends beyond his own family and company. He's been presenting himself as a successful businessman, using that reputation to guide others. If he's been giving advice while his own business collapses, how many other people has he potentially harmed? I can provide you with the documentation, I offer. The board should have access to the truth before making any decisions about leadership. Please send it to me first thing tomorrow, James says. This is going to create significant waves, Marlowe. The business community here is small and interconnected. When this becomes public knowledge, and it will, there's going to be fallout. Are you prepared for that? I didn't start this to destroy Reginald's business reputation, I tell him honestly. I just wanted to protect my daughter. But I won't pretend I'm sorry if there are consequences for his lies. After that call ends, I realize the full scope of what I've set in motion. This isn't just about a ruined wedding or a family conflict anymore. This is about Reginald Crowley's complete professional and social destruction. The business community will turn on him once they know the truth. His reputation, which is apparently all he has left, will be demolished. Part of me feels guilty about that. But a larger part remembers Aurelia's face when Reginald called her an opportunist, remembers the sound of people laughing at my daughter's pain, and the guilt evaporates. My phone rings a third time. It's nearly 11 now, and I'm genuinely considering just turning the phone off. But the caller ID shows Aurelia, so I answer immediately. "Mom, are you okay?" she asks, and I can hear worry in her voice. "Callum just got a call from his uncle Edward. He said his father went to the police to file a complaint against you. Is that true?" "It's true, but it's not something you need to worry about tonight," I tell her. "Your father-in-law is lashing out because I exposed his lies. I have documentation for everything I said. This is just him trying to regain some control." "I'm so sorry," Aurelia says, and she sounds close to tears. "This is all my fault. If I hadn't fallen in love with Callum, if I hadn't wanted to marry into that family—" "Stop," I interrupt firmly. "None of this is your fault. You fell in love with a good man who happens to have toxic parents. That's not a crime, and it's not something you should apologize for. But now you're dealing with legal trouble because you defended me." "Sweetheart, I'm dealing with a false police report from a desperate man who knows he's been exposed. That's not real legal trouble. That's just noise." I pause, then add, "This is what mothers do. We protect our children, and we accept whatever consequences come from that protection. I'd do everything exactly the same way again." She's quiet for a moment, then says, "Callum wants to help. He says he'll testify about his father's behavior, about the trust fund theft, whatever you need. That's not necessary right now, but tell him I appreciate the offer." I take a deep breath. "How are you two doing, really?" "We're okay," she says, and I hear something lighter in her voice. "We're actually better than okay. We've been talking for hours about everything, about his parents, about boundaries, about what we want our marriage to look like. It's hard, but it feels honest in a way things haven't felt in months. That's good," I tell her. "That's what today was supposed to accomplish. Honesty, truth, a foundation you can actually build on." After we say goodbye, I finally start my car and head home. The events of the day are catching up with me, and I feel every one of my 57 years. But underneath the exhaustion is something else. Certainty, conviction, the absolute knowledge that I did what needed to be done. Reginald Crowley wanted to play games with my daughter's life and happiness. He wanted to use her as a financial resource while humiliating her publicly. He made a fundamental miscalculation. He forgot that behind every successful young woman is usually a mother who fought her own battles to get where she is, who learned hard lessons about protecting what matters, who will absolutely burn down anyone who threatens her child. He forgot that I'm not the 24-year-old bride he terrorized with whispers and rumors 3 decades ago. I'm a woman who rebuilt a fortune from nothing, who survived loss and betrayal, who learned that sometimes the only way to win is to fight back harder than your opponent expects. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. Detective Hammond's investigation, James Peterson's board inquiry, whatever other moves Reginald makes in his desperation. But tonight, I drive home, knowing my daughter is safe. Her marriage has a genuine foundation, and the man who tried to destroy her has been exposed for exactly what he is. Sometimes protecting the people you love means scorching the earth around them. I'm not sorry for the fire I started today. I'm only sorry it was necessary. The next 3 weeks are a storm of consequences that builds into something I never fully anticipated. Detective Hammond calls 2 days after the wedding to schedule a formal interview. I arrive at the police station with my lawyer, Marcus Webb, and 3 boxes of documentation. We spend 4 hours going through everything: financial records, investigation reports, authenticated letters from 3 decades ago, property documents, bank statements. Marcus is methodical, presenting each piece of evidence with clear explanations of how it was legally obtained. Detective Hammond takes notes, asks clarifying questions, and by the end of the interview, she looks more frustrated with Reginald than with me. "Mrs. Scotland, I'm going to be frank with you," she says as we're wrapping up. "Nothing you did appears to be criminal. You hired a licensed investigator, obtained publicly available financial documents, and told the truth in a private setting. Mr. Crowley's complaint is essentially that you embarrassed him with facts. That's not extortion, and it's not fraud." "So the complaint will be dismissed?" Marcus asks. "I'll have to submit my report to the prosecutor's office, but I don't see any basis for charges here." She looks at me directly. "However, Mr. Crowley has also indicated he intends to pursue civil action against you for defamation. That's outside my jurisdiction, but you should be prepared for it." I am prepared for it. In fact, the letter from Reginald's attorney arrives the very next day. It's 8 pages of legal language that essentially boils down to demanding I publicly retract my statements, pay him $2 million in damages, and sign a non-disclosure agreement preventing me from discussing his finances or family ever again. Marcus reads the letter and laughs. Actually laughs. "This is the most desperate piece of legal intimidation I've seen in 15 years of practice," he tells me in his office. "Everything you said was demonstrably true. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. He has no case, and his attorney knows it. This is just an attempt to scare you into silence." "I'm not planning to be silent," I tell him. "Good. Because I think we should go on the offensive. File a countersuit for the costs you incurred paying off his mortgage, plus legal fees, plus damages for his attempted fraud against your daughter. Make it clear that if he wants a legal war, you're prepared to fight it." I authorize Marcus to file the countersuit. 2 days later, it's done. And that's when things start to accelerate beyond just a legal dispute between 2 families. The Charleston Business Association holds an emergency board meeting. James Peterson invites me to attend to present my documentation about Crowley Pharmaceuticals. I arrive to find 12 prominent business owners seated around a conference table, all of them looking grim. I present the evidence methodically. The debt, the FDA investigation, the patent losses, the gambling, the embezzlement from Callum's trust fund. When I finish, the room is silent for a long moment. Then Margaret Chen, who owns a chain of medical clinics, speaks up. "Reginald Crowley advised me 6 months ago to invest in a pharmaceutical distribution partnership he was developing. He presented it as a sure thing, guaranteed returns. I was about to commit $200,000 to it. He pitched me something similar," adds David Torres, a real estate developer. "Said it was a ground floor opportunity in a revolutionary cardiac medication. I almost invested." One by one, board members reveal that Reginald has been soliciting investments from them for various schemes, all presented as low-risk opportunities backed by his successful pharmaceutical company. None of them invested yet, but several were seriously considering it. "He was running what amounts to a confidence scheme," James says flatly, "using his reputation and our trust to generate capital for a failing business, with none of us knowing the real financial situation. If any of us had invested based on his misrepresentations, we could have lost everything." The board votes unanimously to remove Reginald from his position, to issue a formal statement warning members about his business practices, and to report the potential investment fraud to state authorities. I leave that meeting realizing that I haven't just exposed Reginald to his family. I've exposed him to the entire Charleston business community. The local business journal picks up the story 3 days later. The headline reads, "Prominent Pharmaceutical Executive Under Investigation for Financial Misconduct." The article is carefully worded to avoid libel, but it lays out the basic facts about Crowley Pharmaceuticals' debts, the FDA investigation, and Reginald's removal from the business association. My name isn't mentioned, but anyone who was at the wedding knows exactly where the information came from. That's when Reginald makes his biggest mistake. He calls a press conference. actually calls reporters to his office, and makes a statement accusing me by name of orchestrating a campaign to destroy him because I'm a social climber who wanted to prevent my daughter from marrying into an established family. He calls me vindictive, claims I falsified documents, suggests I'm motivated by jealousy of old Charleston society. It's almost word for word the same accusations he whispered about me 33 years ago. Except this time, he's saying them on camera, on the record, to journalists who immediately start fact-checking his claims. Marcus calls me the same day the press conference airs. He just committed defamation on video, he says, and I can hear the grin in his voice. Everything he said about you is provably false, and he said it to the media with clear intent to damage your reputation. We now have grounds for a much stronger countersuit. But before we can file amended complaints, something else happens. The FDA announces publicly that Crowley Pharmaceuticals is under formal investigation for pricing fraud related to a cardiac medication. The announcement includes details about inflated costs, kickbacks to doctors, and falsified research data. The investigation has apparently been ongoing for 18 months, and they're now at the stage of filing formal charges. Within 24 hours, Crowley Pharmaceuticals' few remaining business partners start severing contracts. The company's stock, which was already declining, drops to nearly nothing. 2 of Reginald's investors file lawsuits seeking to recover their money. And the bank that holds the mortgages on the Crowley estate announces foreclosure proceedings on the 2 mortgages I didn't pay off. I watch all of this unfold from the relative safety of my office, taking calls from my lawyer, from business associates, from journalists seeking comments. I give no interviews, make no public statements. I don't need to. The truth is doing its work without any additional help from me. Aurelia calls me every few days to check in. She and Callum have moved into a modest apartment downtown, completely separate from any Crowley family properties. Callum has cut off all contact with his parents, and from what Aurelia tells me, he's in intensive therapy processing decades of manipulation and emotional abuse. He's angry, Aurelia tells me during one call. Really angry, not at you, at them. At his father for lying, at his mother for enabling it, at himself for not seeing it sooner. His therapist says the anger is healthy, that it's part of breaking free from their control. How are you handling all of this? I ask her. Honestly, I feel guilty that I'm relieved. His parents were awful to me, and now I don't have to pretend anymore. I don't have to sit through dinners where his mother makes comments about my clothes or my career. I don't have to smile while his father interrogates me about your finances. But I feel like I shouldn't be relieved because Callum is hurting. You can be relieved and sympathetic at the same time, I tell her. Those feelings aren't mutually exclusive. 3 weeks after the wedding, Marcus calls with unexpected news. Reginald Crowley's attorney contacted me. He wants to discuss a settlement. A settlement of what? His baseless lawsuit against me? He's willing to drop all legal action against you if you agree to drop your countersuit and sign a mutual non-disparagement agreement. Basically, everyone walks away and stops talking about each other. Absolutely not, I say immediately. I want my money back for the mortgage I paid, and I want him to admit publicly that everything I said about his finances was true. That's not going to happen, Marlo. He's not going to admit anything publicly. His entire strategy now is damage control, minimizing the fallout. A public admission would destroy whatever credibility he has left. Then we go to trial. Marcus is quiet for a moment. I need to tell you something about going to trial. It's going to be expensive, probably cost you $50,000 in legal fees. It's going to be time-consuming, could take a year or more to get a court date. And it's going to be public, which means more media attention, more scrutiny of your family, more stress for Aurelia and Callum. I don't care about the money or the time, I tell him. And Aurelia is tougher than you think. What I care about is the principle. Reginald Crowley tried to destroy my reputation 33 years ago, and he tried to do the same thing to my daughter 3 weeks ago. He needs to face actual consequences, not just slink away into a settlement that lets him pretend he did nothing wrong. Okay, Marcus says. Then we prepare for trial. But Marlo, I need you to understand something. Even if we win, even if we get a judgment against him for the mortgage money and damages, Reginald Crowley is going bankrupt. His company is failing. His assets are being seized. His creditors are circling. You might win a judgment and never collect a penny because there's nothing left to collect. I still want the judgment, I tell him. I wanted on the public record that he defrauded me, that he lied, that everything I said was true. Even if I never see a dollar, I want that documentation to exist. We proceed with litigation. But 2 days before we're scheduled for a preliminary hearing, something happens that changes everything. Gwendolyn Crowley calls me. I almost don't answer when I see the name on my phone. But curiosity wins out. "Mrs. Scotland," Gwendolyn says, and her voice sounds destroyed, hollow. "I need to speak with you. In person, if possible. Please." Against my better judgment, I agree to meet her at a neutral location, a coffee shop in downtown Charleston. I bring Marcus with me, just in case this is some kind of setup or trap. Gwendolyn arrives alone. She looks like she's aged 10 years and 3 weeks. Her hair is unwashed, her clothes are wrinkled, and she's not wearing makeup. This is not the polished society woman I've dealt with for the past year. "Thank you for seeing me," she says, as she sits down across from me and Marcus. "I know you have no reason to trust me or listen to anything I have to say." "You're right," I tell her. "So why am I here?" "Because I need to tell you the truth about what happened at the wedding," she says. "Not the version Reginald is telling his lawyers or the press, but what actually happened, what he actually planned." Marcus and I exchange glances. "Go on," he says. Gwendolyn takes a shaky breath. "Reginald planned that speech for weeks. He wrote it, practiced it, revised it. He researched exactly what to say to humiliate Aurelia as thoroughly as possible. His goal was to break her emotionally, to make her feel so small and worthless that she'd be desperate to prove her worth to our family." "Why?" I ask, though I think I already know the answer. "Because desperate people make bad decisions." Reginald was going to comfort her after the speech, play the magnanimous father-in-law who decides to give her a chance despite her flaws. And then, when she was emotional and grateful, he was going to present paperwork for her to sign. Documents that would have given him power of attorney over assets you were planning to transfer to her, authorization to make investment decisions on her behalf, access to accounts and properties. My hands clench into fists under the table. That's not just manipulation. That's fraud. "It's what Reginald does," Gwendolyn says, and there's something dead in her voice. "It's what he's always done. He identifies people's vulnerabilities and exploits them. He did it to me 35 years ago when I was young and desperate for my parents' approval. He convinced me to marry him by making me believe no one else would want me. He's been controlling me ever since through fear and financial dependence." "Why are you telling me this now?" Marcus asks. "Because I'm leaving him," Gwendolyn says simply. "I've filed for divorce. I've moved out of the house, and I'm cooperating with the FBI investigation into his business practices. I've given them documents, emails, recordings of conversations where he discussed defrauding investors. Everything." She reaches into her purse and pulls out a folder. "These are copies of Reginald's notes for the wedding speech, including his plans for what came after. I'm giving them to you because they prove premeditation. They prove intent to defraud Aurelia, and they prove that everything you said about him was understated, if anything. He's worse than you know." Marcus takes the folder and starts reading. His eyebrows go up as he pages through the documents. "This is devastating," he says quietly. "This proves conspiracy to commit fraud, emotional manipulation, financial exploitation. Marlowe, with this evidence, we don't just have a defamation case, we potentially have grounds for criminal charges." I look at Gwendolyn, studying her face. "Why now? Why betray him after all these years of standing by his side?" "Because I saw what he did to your daughter," she says, and tears start running down her face. "I saw her crying, saw her devastated, and I laughed. I actually laughed because some sick part of me was glad it was happening to someone else for once. And then I saw you stand up and fight for her, and I realized I've never had anyone fight for me like that. Not my parents, not my friends, certainly not my husband. I've spent 35 years being complicit in Reginald's cruelty because I was too afraid to be alone." She wipes her eyes with shaking hands. "But watching Aurelia marry Callum anyway, watching them choose each other despite everything, watching your daughter be brave enough to stand up to our family, it made me realize I've wasted my entire life being a coward. I can't get those years back, but I can at least stop enabling Reginald to hurt other people." The coffee shop is quiet around us. Marcus is still reading through the documents, occasionally making notes. I'm watching Gwendolyn fall apart across from me, and I feel something I didn't expect to feel. Pity. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe never, but genuine pity for a woman who spent decades in a prison of her own fear. "What do you want from me?" I ask her gently. "Nothing," she says. "I'm not here to ask for mercy or forgiveness. I'm here to give you the weapons to finish destroying him, because he deserves it, and because maybe helping you is the only decent thing I can do after years of being complicit in his damage." She stands up to leave, then pauses. "Tell Aurelia I'm sorry. Tell her I know sorry isn't enough, that it doesn't undo the harm. But tell her anyway. She deserves to hear it." After Gwendolyn leaves, Marcus and I sit in silence for several minutes, processing what just happened. "This changes everything," he finally says. "With this evidence, we can prove that Reginald's defamation lawsuit is not just baseless but malicious, filed in bad faith to cover up attempted fraud. We can get it dismissed with prejudice and potentially get sanctions against him and his attorney. Your countersuit becomes much stronger. And we need to turn this over to law enforcement immediately because this is evidence of criminal intent." "Do it," I tell him. "All of it. File every motion, report everything to the authorities, pursue every legal avenue available. I'm done protecting Reginald Crowley from the consequences of his own actions." As we leave the coffee shop, I feel something shift inside me. This isn't about revenge anymore, if it ever really was. This is about justice. About ensuring that a man who has spent decades manipulating and harming people finally faces accountability. About protecting not just my daughter, but every other potential victim Reginald might target in the future. The war isn't over, but I just acquired nuclear weapons delivered by the most unlikely ally imaginable, and I'm going to use them. 3 months after the wedding, I stand in a courtroom watching Reginald Crowley accept a plea deal that will send him to federal prison for 18 months. The charges are extensive: wire fraud, securities fraud, embezzlement from Callum's trust fund, tax evasion. The evidence Gwendolyn provided, combined with the FBI's investigation and the documentation I gathered, built an overwhelming case. Reginald's attorneys advised him that going to trial would likely result in 5 to 7 years in prison. The plea deal is mercy he doesn't deserve, but I'm told it's standard for white-collar criminals with no prior record. I watch him stand before the judge, this man who terrorized me 3 decades ago and tried to destroy my daughter 3 months ago, and I feel nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, no vindication. Just a quiet sense of completion. He's being held accountable. That's enough. Aurelia and Callum sit beside me in the courtroom. Callum's face is expressionless as he watches his father accept the plea. He hasn't spoken to Reginald since the wedding, hasn't responded to the letters Reginald sent trying to explain himself, trying to minimize what he did. According to Callum's therapist, that distance is healthy, necessary. After the hearing, we walk out of the courthouse into bright September sunshine. Reporters are waiting, cameras ready, but Marcus runs interference, and we make it to my car without giving any statements. "How are you feeling?" I ask Callum as we drive away. "Empty," he says after a long pause. "I thought I'd feel something. Relief maybe, or closure, but I just feel empty." Aurelia takes his hand. They've been married for 3 months now, and I've watched their relationship grow stronger through this crisis. They're in couples therapy together, working through the trauma, and building the kind of communication they should have had from the beginning. "Empty is okay," Aurelia tells him. "You don't have to feel any particular way about this." The legal resolution came surprisingly quickly once Gwendolyn's evidence was submitted. Reginald's defamation lawsuit against me was dismissed with prejudice, meaning he can never refile it. The judge sanctioned both Reginald and his attorney for filing a frivolous suit in bad faith. My countersuit was settled before it went to trial. Reginald didn't have money to pay the judgment, but the settlement included a written admission that everything I revealed at the wedding was true, and that he had attempted to defraud Aurelia. That admission is now part of the public court record. That's all I really wanted. Crowley Pharmaceuticals declared bankruptcy 6 weeks after the wedding. The company's assets were liquidated to pay creditors. The FDA's investigation resulted in massive fines that will never be paid because there's nothing left to pay them with. Several of Reginald's former business partners are still pursuing civil suits, but they're fighting over scraps at this point. The Crowley estate was sold at auction. I considered buying it out of spite, but decided that would be petty. A tech entrepreneur from California bought it for significantly less than its previous value. Gwendolyn used her portion of the proceeds to rent a small condo downtown and start therapy. She sends Callum letters sometimes. He doesn't read them yet, but he doesn't throw them away either. His therapist says that's progress. My business has actually grown since all of this became public. Several potential clients told me they were impressed by how I handled the situation, by my willingness to stand up to a powerful family and expose corruption. Apparently, protecting your daughter and refusing to be intimidated is good for business. Who knew? The Charleston Business Association asked me to take over as president starting next year. I accepted. James Peterson told me the board voted unanimously, that they want leadership that prioritizes integrity over social connections. It's ironic, considering that 33 years ago, that same organization nearly rejected my membership application because of the rumors Reginald spread about me. But the most important resolution isn't legal or professional. It's personal. Last week, Aurelia and Callum invited me to dinner at their apartment. Just the three of us, home-cooked meal, nothing fancy. Over dessert, Aurelia told me they've been talking about the future, about the kind of family they want to build together. We want it to be different from what either of us grew up with, she said. Not that you did anything wrong, Mom. You were amazing. But I grew up watching you carry so much alone, especially after Dad died. And Callum grew up in a family that was all appearance and no substance. We want something real, something honest. We want to build something that isn't about money or status or impressing anyone, Callum added. Just about actually caring for each other and any kids we might have someday. Kids. The idea of grandchildren hadn't even occurred to me yet. But sitting there in their small apartment, eating the slightly overcooked chicken Callum made and the excellent salad Aurelia prepared, I could suddenly envision it. Holidays with no toxic relatives, no performances, no hidden agendas, just genuine love and connection. I think you'll be wonderful parents, I told them honestly. Whenever you're ready for that. We're not ready yet, Aurelia said quickly. We have a lot of healing to do first, but we're talking about it, which feels important. After dinner, as I was leaving, Aurelia walked me to my car. The October air was cool, autumn settling into Charleston with its usual gentle grace. Mom, I need to tell you something, she said as we stood in the parking lot. I spent a lot of the past year being angry at you for not trusting the Crowleys, for investigating them, for always being suspicious. I thought you were being paranoid or overprotective. I know, I said quietly. But you were right, about everything. And more than that, you were brave enough to act on your instincts even when I was pushing back, even when it would have been easier to just stay quiet and hope for the best. She hugged me tightly. Thank you for being the kind of mother who fights for her daughter even when her daughter doesn't think she needs fighting for. I held her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo, feeling grateful beyond words that she's safe and happy and building a life based on truth instead of lies. I'll always fight for you, I told her. That's not negotiable, even when you don't want me to, even when it makes you angry. I'm your mother. Fighting for you is what I do. Now, standing in my office looking out at the Charleston harbor, I think about everything that's happened since that wedding day. The legal battles, the media attention, the business consequences, the family fractures. It's been exhausting and stressful, and occasionally terrifying. But I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. Because Aurelia is free from a toxic family that would have spent years manipulating and using her. Callum is free from parents who saw him as an asset instead of a son. They have the chance to build something real together, something healthy, something based on the truth instead of pretty lies. And I've learned something important about myself. I'm not the intimidated young bride I was 33 years ago, afraid of whispers and desperate for acceptance. I'm not even the grieving widow I was 8 years ago, terrified of losing everything. I'm a woman who knows her own strength, who will use every resource at her disposal to protect the people she loves, who refuses to be silenced by threats or intimidation. Reginald Crowley thought he could humiliate my daughter and get away with it because he'd gotten away with similar behavior for decades. He thought his social position and business reputation made him untouchable. He forgot that the world changes, that women who were once powerless sometimes build their own power, and that a mother protecting her child is one of the most dangerous forces in nature. He learned his lesson. I just wish he hadn't forced me to teach it so publicly. My phone buzzes with a text from Aurelia. It's a photo of her and Callum at the farmer's market, both of them smiling genuinely, holding bags of produce. The caption reads, "Making dinner tonight. Real food, real life, real happiness. Love you, Mom." I smile and text back a heart emoji. Then I turn back to my desk, to the design proposals waiting for my review, to the business I built from nothing, to the life I reconstructed from ruins. The past 3 months have been a war. But wars end, and life continues. Scars remain, lessons are learned, and sometimes justice actually prevails. Not always, not often enough, but sometimes. This was one of those times, and that's enough.